Welcome, my friends, to the Sage of Quay Radio Hour, your home for free and critical thinking, and I'm your host, Mike Williams. Tonight, Ole Dammegård returns to the show. Ole is one of the preeminent researchers studying and exposing the dark business of assassination and false flags. He is a prize-winning author, investigator, and former journalist. Ole dedicated more than 30 years of his life to solve the mystery behind the assassination of the Swedish Prime Minister, Olof Palme, a dangerous undertaking which cost the lives of two of his colleagues. His extensive research has also revealed incredible links to other big political events like the killing of John F. Kennedy, his brother Robert Kennedy, John Lennon, and many others, as well as the cold-blooded sinking of the MS Estonia, which resulted in the loss of almost 1,000 innocent lives. Ole's work is completely self-funded, so if you could take a moment after the show and visit his website, lightonconspiracies.com, and consider donating or sponsoring his work, Ole would be greatly appreciative. For tonight's discussion, Ole sheds new light on the July 2011 Norway attacks, where two sequential terrorist events by supposed lone wolf Anders Behring Breivik claimed the lives of 77 people, 69 of which were mostly young teenagers at a youth camp. Ole's ongoing investigation and research into this event is turning up many unanswered questions and calling into question the official government account of what really happened that day. And so without further ado, here's Ole Dammegård. Hi, Ole. Welcome back to the show. And it's, as you know, always a pleasure to have you on, and you're always welcome to come back anytime you'd like. And you and I spoke briefly, I guess about a week ago, and you had mentioned to me that you had some important news and some information that you wanted to get out. So I was wondering if you'd like to discuss that today.
I'd be most happy to do that because I've just returned from a tour in Norway and Sweden, where I always try to go on location, to get on location for these big, awful so-called terror events and so on, because once I'm there, it's so much easier for me to debunk the whole thing if it's a setup, or find out what actually happened if it was the real thing, and then gather as much evidence and so on as possible on site. Because the thing is, once you're there, it's so much easier to get a feeling for distances, angles, and also get an emotional connection with it. Because for me, these things are very emotional, especially when people have been sacrificed or killed or blown up for the sake of big so-called politics, or I would call super criminality, organized crime, and so on. And then duping the rest of us into believing that it was the act of a lone crazy guy instead of us understanding what was actually going on, which was, well, so many times it's inside jobs based on the old Roman tactic, problem, reaction, solution. They secretly create a problem to get the reaction from us. Oh my God, something needs to be done. And then we turn towards the ones that have actually created the problem without us knowing it, saying, please save us, please save us. And then they will come with a solution. And this is every single time a solution we would never, ever have accepted had it not been for the problem. Problem, reaction, solution. How to control a big population if you have selected yourself and your friends as an elite few to do whatever you want and then control the rest of us with fear. I went to Norway. Actually, I was given a ticket from a wonderful man in Holland who was the arranger of the Open Mind Conference in Amsterdam, where I was a speaker recently. And after that, his name is Wilhelm Fellenhoff. He's a very brave whistleblower himself. And he said, after this event, he said, listen, we need to keep the ball rolling. This is the year when so much is happening. We need to keep it rolling. Is there any way I can assist you? And I said, please, get me to Norway. Get me to Norway. So he said, for sure, I got a ticket, and boom, I was off. And without really knowing it, I came at the almost on the day, the anniversary of this awful event that happened 2011 on the 22nd of July, where somewhere around 69 young people from the age of 14 to 17, most of them, were slaughtered, executed on an island. They were gunned down by what is said to have been a lone crazy gunman. And also there was a bomb that went off in central Oslo, very similar to the one in Oklahoma City, officially killing 8 people and just blowing the whole block damaged. So I went there. It was a whole long line of I would say divine synchronicity. The amount of things that happened during these 9 days I was there, the people I met that I didn't even know existed, many of them, but were key people in this whole thing, just gives me great hope and faith that we're not alone in this. There's something else that is supporting us, guiding us in this so-called fight against evil. And this also helped me make me more or less fearless in many of these situations, because I feel something so much bigger than just us as people is going on. It really is like a battle between the light and the dark. And we are here to do our part, whatever that part is. My part in this lifetime has been to become who I am today, to do these type of things so that I can tell you about them, and then it's up to you what you want to do with that information. I went to Norway and I gave a speech in central Oslo. The name of it was very discreet, political assassinations and false flag operations. Very discreet. And in the audience, there were people, I was told afterwards, from the secret police of Norway, because we are in a very strange time in history where telling the truth equals terrorism.
Yeah, I was
Where
going to say
stands,
that wasn't very discreet.
I know, I'm not discreet. And no, but the thing is, I welcome these people from the secret services and so on, because they are the ones that need to learn about these things the most. So please come. You consider yourself that we're enemies. I see you as a brother, totally duped, not aware of what you're doing, because this is the way most of these things are done. And just as a little extra thing that happened on this tour was I met up with people from Hells Angels that they have seen my talks about false flag operations. They were very inspired by them. I was like, what? And they say, because they are the victims of false flag operations as well. You know, they say that media and the government and the people behind these things are using them, blaming them in false flag operations, where they are the ones that are being pointed out as the bad guys. And many times they have not done it. They've been set up. Some of these gang wars, I mean, as far as I know, recently there was one in the States where there were 2 major biker gangs that was met up like in a showdown, it ended up with 9 of them being dead. But afterward, it was found out that all 9 was shot by snipers. There was no gang war. You know, this is the thing. And also, I've been contacted by people from Gladio in Sweden, you know, Stay Behind, these people that I've been trying to expose for years and years. But, and also where I think that my dad, when I grew up, was a part of the Danish part of the Stay Behind and Gladio in Denmark. But many of these people are good people. They think that they're doing something good, and then they've been used as a terror tool without understanding what's going on. And now they are getting very upset as well, saying, oh my God, we put ourselves on the line. We put our loyalty to this whole thing. And here we are. We're just finding out that, my God, we've been used, duped, and so on. So I find this really interesting that, you know, the so-called bad guys are approaching me saying that let's join up, you know, let's sort this out. Let's wake up together. I was also recently contacted by an immigrant, a young immigrant in Sweden, where they are being blamed for burning cars and starting riots in the suburbs of Stockholm. And he said, we didn't do it. It was not us. And there was some of the major newspapers that were paying some people to do these things, you know. So we're looking at the same thing again and again and again, which makes it so important to, when things happen and you see them in the official media, in main media, take a step back, breathe, be calm, and then start using your eyes and your normal, what I call Farmer Brown logic. Does it make sense? Does the evidence show the official story? Does it match up, or is there anything? And also, what is the solution we're being presented to this so-called problem? This happened. Oh my God, it's awful, it's awful, it's awful. And here comes the solution. Goes so fast nowadays. Boom, boom, boom. Within 30 seconds on the news, the reporter will give you the solution. Dun, dun, dun. There you go. Don't even think. Just react emotionally. And we thank you. And now you can leave the stage, and we will just continue with our very brutal agenda.
It's interesting,
So,
Ole, because what you explained there, at least my takeaway is that these supposedly disparate groups like the Hells Angels and that the immigrant gentleman that you were speaking about, they're supposed to stay separated and apart and not converge. And so it sounds like what's happening is people are in groups are starting to converge now and coming together for a common cause and understanding that virtually all of this stuff is orchestrated and engineered.
and this is the beauty of it all.
Right.
This is also where I really feel, I want to approach gang members. I want to approach so-called bad guys because they think that they're reacting against the system, that they're standing up against the system. I would say you're playing the so-called elite's hand right in their hand. You're doing them a favor. By being a badass, you are playing their game. The
Right.
thing is, if you want to revolt, if you want to stand up, if you want to become a warrior, you have to turn it around, wake up, turn it around, become a good guy, because everything at this point is turned upside down. Just like Garrison said in the movie JFK, listen, folks, we need to wake up. Black is white and white is black. We are behind the mirror. This is the language of these people. So we've been taught to see the world around us through how should I say, like in the old days when you took a photo, you got a negative. If you took a black and white photo, you got a negative,
Yep.
and everything is the contrary. Then you take it into a dark room, you add light to it, and then you get the real exposure. We are being programmed into believing that this twisted black and white version, where all the colors are the exact opposite of what it really is, we're being told that this is the real reality. I would say by adding light to this, fearless exposure, letting go of fear, add the light to it, that will make the real picture appear. And so it's time for us to name things for what they are. Like instead of CIA, oh, it sounds really exciting. They're there to help us. Sorry, absolutely not. It's like CIA, the cocaine import agency would be a more appropriate name. The White House, the Satanic House, the FBI, Federal Bureau of Intimidation, or whatever. So change it. Call it for what it is. And government comes from the word governmente, control the mind control. It's right there in our face. So we need to take back our strength, not trust in people that are there to control our minds. I mean, it's madness. It's absolute madness. And we're doing it without force. We're doing it on our own. It's time for us to just take a step back and say, listen, guys, I'm not up for it anymore. We need to sort this out, not giving out our power like that. Anyway, so back in Norway, I had the immense pleasure of meeting some very interesting people there. And one of them, when I gave that speech, was a journalist, a Norwegian journalist. His name is Hans Gaarder. That's Hans Gaarder with a double A. He's got a website, hansgaarder.no, I think. Anyway, he is one of the very few in Norway that has put any or looked at these events with any critical eye. It's him, as far as I know, it's him and an anonymous guy called Justamik. These are the only two that I've been able to find that have really looked at this one, putting question marks in on the side, saying, listen, it doesn't make sense. All the rest is pumping propaganda. It was Breivik. The accused, or the guy who's now imprisoned for the crime, his name was Anders Behring Breivik, a Norwegian-born 32-year-old guy that is said to have reacted so much against multiculturalism and whatever else it was he said. he was an anti-Muslim, and he said, I'm so upset with the Labour Party of Norway. They have betrayed us. So I will just go out, blow up the government buildings, and kill as many people as possible to make a statement. That's the official story. And if I do like this, if I go, it's like there are two chapters, one in Oslo, the bomb, and then one, the mass shooting. If we take it one chapter each, the official story is that around 3:30 in the afternoon on the 22nd of July, Anders Breivik had two cars. He had a van and a small rental car. And the van was filled with a 950 kilo fertilizer bomb. Sounds very similar to Oklahoma City. He went around 3:30 in the afternoon. He goes and parks this just outside the government building, the entrance to the government building. He leaves the car dressed in a police uniform. There's absolutely no people in the neighborhood, but he leaves it. He has a police uniform and a police helmet on with a whatever you call it, like a plastic thing, you plastic cover that you pull down.
Shield.
A shield, yeah. He's got a revolver in one hand and something else in the other hand. And there's some surveillance camera that sees him. You cannot see that it's this guy, Breivik, because he's totally anonymous, but in a uniform. Anyway, so he leaves, and a witness sees that he jumps into the other car, the other rental car, and takes off. So the witness thinks that it's a little bit odd to see a policeman with a gun and a helmet with a shield jump into a rental car. So he writes down the number. Anyway, the police car or the policeman takes off and starts driving northwest about 40 minutes northwest of Oslo to this little island. On his way there, the bomb goes off and it just blows the whole area. The buildings are not damaged so much, but all the glass is sucked out, not blown in, sucked out. Everything is sucked out into the center of this where the explosion was, so-called explosion. It is said that there's 8 people killed there, and so total devastation. Anyway, on the way after that, he's on his way to the island, and the island is since many years it's famous for having summer camps for the Labour Party. It's their island, and there was about 500 teenagers there this day from all over the world and so on. There's one little ferry boat that crosses between the island and the mainland. The distance is about 600 meters. I don't know what that is in feet, maybe 1,800 feet or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Not very long, you know. No, it's half a mile, I think, something like that in inches or whatever you call it, American terms. So the island is it's very close to the mainland. It's about 600 meters long. It's like half a mile from the mainland. And there's one ferry boat called MS Torbjörn that goes there. It's only the size there can be maximum 50 people on board, one vehicle and passengers, nothing more than that, not a big one. But it's totally armored. It used to be in the marine, so it's an armored little vessel. Anyway, it's said that the policeman jumps onto this ferry boat. People are helping, or somebody is helping him in with a very heavy bag. He's dressed in a police uniform, or more like a wetsuit type of thing with a police emblem on. And then he crosses towards this island. He picks up a rifle and a gun, and very calmly starts executing people. He starts by killing 2 adult people in their 50s, headshots, boom, boom. And then panic spreads. Everybody starts screaming, running around. And for the next hour or so, he walks around and executes young people in the water, among the cliffs, in the buildings, and so on, without anyone stopping him. Then finally, the so-called SWAT team arrives to the island, and they scream out his name or shout out his name. And he, without shooting back, he just puts down his gun and spread out his arms to the sides and surrender. Okay, so that was the official story. Now, Fletcher Prouty, if we go back to the movie JFK, he's the one that is called Mr. X. And his real name was Fletcher Prouty, a man that I deeply respected. he spent his whole life as a whistleblower exposing these methods that the CIA and other how they work, or what templates they're using, and so on. And he said one sure sign of a black op is not so much what happens, but what doesn't happen, what suddenly does not work. Things that always like is super efficient, and then suddenly it just go into absolute standby, sleep mode, slow motion, nothing happens, bodyguards are pulled away, all type of security goes down, camera stops working, and once the whole operation is done and the people that have done it are given plenty of time to escape, then boom, in comes them, and they suddenly everything goes very efficient again. They secure like an iron ring around an iron circle around the whole site of the crime, and then they look in all the wrong places, pointing towards the patsy. That's the whole idea. At the same time, there's also their own investigation on standby. So as soon as the crime is committed, boom, their own investigation moves in, so that no normal, honest, decent investigators and detectives have any chance to look into it. The task of this investigation is only to stop anyone from getting close to the real truth, and just speak with media pointing them in the wrong direction. And then this is followed up by commissions, 1, 2, or 3, or more, depending on if people don't want to quit. Normal people will not give up messing around trying to find the truth. The investigations are part of the crime. I'm not saying all people working there, but the key people for sure. And the people in the commissions, which are very often Freemasons, and due to their links in the Freemasonry, they are put there to, once again, they say that they will look into the crime. No, they will come out after a year or so. They will have made thousands of documents that are so boring, saying absolutely nothing, that will bore you to tears. And it will, in the media during this year as well, they would drag it out, so that you will get so tired of the whole thing that you won't bother to look into it. Then, if that doesn't work with one commission and people are still upset, then you just put another commission in there. And that commission, the first commission, would not look into the crime. It will only look into the investigation. And it will say, my God, you messed up on this point and this point and this point. But otherwise than that, you did great. We've done a perfect job, so thank you and goodbye. If people are not satisfied, then you just pull in another commission and you give it some fancy name like the truth and something that sounds very official, and my God, this is a real thing. That commission moves in. Very often, sometimes they use the same members, they just change positions of them, so the secretary becomes the chairman and so on. So you get an illusion of democracy. And then if that doesn't work, you just pull another commission. And they just, after the assassination of the Swedish prime minister, there was at least 3 commissions until people gave up, So that's how they do it. According to what Fletcher Prouty says, we have to look out for things that does not work following these type of events. So if we look at this one, I would like to point out a few points, or many, that totally messed up this day. And please understand, Norway is a part of NATO. They've spent billions, maybe not in dollars, but in Norwegian krona, on anti-terror equipment, on SWAT teams, on special ops, on all of these things, high-tech helicopters, weapons, you name it. So you would think that in a country like that, maybe everything should be working. Or at least if it did not work, that heads would roll afterwards, not people being promoted by screwing up. So we look at this thing, and one of the first things that I want to point out is that when you're in central Oslo, I was there this year, 2015, that's 4 years after it happened. The whole block is left the way it was. It's still there. Nothing has been rebuilt. It's just like a big monument of a death and destruction 4 years after. And there's like a skyscraper, or a Norwegian skyscraper. I think it's 15 floors high. It stands like a big tower in the horizon over Oslo. And the whole thing was blown out. All the surrounding buildings blown out, blown out, blown out, and everything is left exactly the way it is to this very day. It's really interesting because if you go on Google Map, you can go Grubbegata. It's Grubbagata, Grubbagata, Grubbegata. That is the street that passes the whole area. And the images there are from 2009. They have not changed. They have not updated it after this whole event in 4 years. So you will see what it looked like, not the way it looks now. Instead of replacing all the windows, they printed, I think it's called tarps, like big plastic sheets printed like a facade with windows on it. So it's covering the whole building. I mean, 15-story high building. It looks like it's been rebuilt, but it's not. It's just printed on it on both sides of this building.
Sounds like a total psyop, Ole. Even putting up the false facades on the buildings, it's maybe a little, reminder, a little wink and a nod that, hey, you know what? You're living in a virtual reality that we control. It's just that's very, very strange.
Very odd. We're talking central Oslo, where apartments are a fortune. I mean, Norway is not a cheap country. My God, everything is super expensive there. So the whole area could be rebuilt with apartments or whatever. And as far as I know, I couldn't find anyone who knew where the government has been working since then. Maybe it's just that I didn't manage to find out. But the people I asked, including this journalist, had no idea. And I would also say, is something going on behind these curtains? All of these buildings, are they just standing empty? Or what's going on in there? Because what they put up is like, wooden planks and stuff for the windows. Hundreds and hundreds of windows, so you cannot see what's going on behind it. So either we're talking about a totally empty shell as a monument of death and destruction, or something else. I don't know. It was just creepy walking around there. It's totally deserted, nothing there, and so on.
Wally, one question for you. You had mentioned earlier that the windows were blown out.
I'll come to that because
Okay.
this is one of. When you have an explosion, you have an epicenter where the explosion happens, and then everything is blown out in a circular motion in all different directions. But in a circular motion, you will have like where the bomb blast was, that part was mostly empty, and then the debris will be blown out in all directions. If there's a wall or a ceiling or something like that, will stop some of the blast, and that will also, you will see that referred into less damage on the building behind it or something like that. Here, we have a totally different picture, because instead of this thing happened, they say that the whole van blew up, and there was absolutely nothing left. There's debris everywhere. It's like everywhere in the street. And all the windows from the very top all the way down to the bottom, all of them blown out or sucked out. You will see that on surveillance cameras and so on. It is sucked out. And that's the same in central Oslo and shops and so on. The shops, the streets were filled with glass. It was sucked out, not blown in, as it would be if it had been a normal explosion. Also, the sound has been referred to as like thunder more than an explosion. And there was no real shockwave as far as I've been able to find out. It was more, it happened, and then you heard all the glass. And when you look at 9/11, you will see that before, especially the second tower goes down, there's one side of the building where it's like there's smoke coming straight out of the concrete wall on the side of the buildings. It's like it's burning. You can see smoke coming from nowhere. There's no fire. There's just this yellowish smoke coming out. And here as well, after the explosion, you can see there's a concrete wall that is still, the smoke is coming from the concrete. So my humble suggestion is we're looking at some kind of advanced weaponry that is not normal explosives. There's something here I would suggest could be connected to HARP or some kind of high energy weapon controlled thing. Very, very odd, the damages. And also when the few surveillance cameras that they have released the films from. I mean, we're back to Pentagon. Nothing works again. Nothing works. But there are a few images that has been given, and you will see that there's like an explosion in one end of the building, and then the explosion moves through the whole building, blowing out the glass from the inside out, from the building itself. But there was something else on the outside. Then, after it happens, the images and the films we have, because this is central Oslo, so many people should have been there, even though it was a Friday afternoon and the end of July, so it was holiday time.
So that we captured this one part, there was an explosion on one side of the building, and it sounded like you were saying it carried through the rest of the building.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also some witnesses were talking about 2 explosions. And if you look at Oklahoma City, there were 2 explosions exactly the same. One explosive that released the gas inside the building, and then a second explosion that blew the whole thing out. Because with the help of that gas inside the building, the power of the explosion became multiplied. I'm not sure what actually happened here in Oslo. I can only say the official story, absolutely no way. And this fertilizer bomb that they're talking about, just like in Oklahoma City, where that didn't make any sense at all either. Here, a fertilizer bomb of 950 kilo could never ever have made that type of damage, and would also have made the most damage closest to the vehicle and the less damage furthest away. But here, some of the damages are at the top of the building is more than at the bottom of the buildings. Said that he was inspired by Timothy McVeigh. He even had the same rifle, I think it was a Ruger .223 and a Glock 17 pistol, just like Timothy McVeigh. Same van type of thing, rental thing, same size of explosives. I would say they're using the same template, but once again, the evidence does not match up. Also, above where he parked the car, there's like a concrete ceiling, and one of the corners of this ceiling looks like melted cheese afterwards. It's just hanging down, just not, it would have been blown upwards or blown away, but here it's like melted hanging down. And then in the beginning, people were asking, but why is there no epicenter? Why can't you see that there's like a mark in the street where the car was standing, where the explosion took place? And then suddenly appeared like a 9-foot wide hole in the ground that was not there to start with, as far as I know. And that is, at one point, there's a big fire van or wagon that is reversed and is standing for a while right above where this hole appears. I would suggest maybe the hole appeared while the fire van or wagon was parked there, so to cover the whole thing up.
Ole, let me just step back for a second. The 9-foot hole, just to make sure I understand what you're talking about. Are you saying that there was no blast crater, if you will, underneath the truck with the fertilizer? Is that what we're saying?
When people started raising questions, saying, how come there's no mark in the street where the car was parked? Why is there no epicenter? Why can't you see where the explosion took place? Then suddenly this hole appeared, I think a few hours after the event. I believe that it was not there to start with, and it appeared afterwards.
Okay.
You would think that there were like hundreds of photos taken by normal people with their mobile phones and so on. Not the case. There's a very limited number of photos. And when you check out the photos in the background and so on, you will see that this Grubbegata was closed off, at least in one end, I would say in both ends. And it's totally isolated. There's no people. And I would also suggest that the buildings were evacuated beforehand. Because there's one guy that comes running after the explosion took place. There's smoke everywhere, and he's running around. Hello, is there anyone there? And there's like a handful, 2-3 people there, and he runs into one of the buildings, the government building. He's running from room to room. It's all devastated, but there's no one there. This is said that it was Friday, it was during the holidays, and people had stopped working. But we're talking at the same time, they say officially, thousands of people were running away from this area. They're just not there. Then there is a policewoman or a woman in like a police uniform that is She has a name tag. She has an official-looking uniform on, saying back off, no filming, no filming. She's got like a walkie-talkie. Her uniform does not exist. It's like a combination of fire brigade and the police. There's no, it does not match up with what is used in Norway. Also, just a few minutes after this explosion, there's a TV team that is on its way there, and they're filming the area on the way there. You see absolutely nothing, but you see a lot of smoke. And then there are three soldiers in camouflage uniforms, green uniforms with red berets, that are, shouting to them, back off, back off. These uniforms are not Norwegian uniforms. They got like an MP sign on the right shoulder, like a big blue patch. And while the TV team is backing off, you can see that the soldiers start picking up a big, long white cable or wire or something like that. This is just around the corner from where this whole thing happened, and they're using blue plastic gloves. There are some photos afterwards showing these soldiers helping the so-called victims. And when people have raised question about these uniforms and so on, there was one article in one of the main newspapers saying, we were the ones doing it. You compare the faces of the three soldiers that steps forward and say, we were not doing it, not the same people. Okay? I think what we're looking at is a black op, false flag, psyop combined. Some people got killed, some people were crisis actors, and it seems like the ones in front of the building were killed for real. I think so. And the people on the back of the building were crisis actors, but people in the government. So a few photos of people hurt in the street in front of the building, especially one woman you're looking at. It looks very realistic. I think she was killed in this thing. And they need real dead people as well. So on the back of the building, you can see suddenly people comes out, and one of them, her face is totally covered in blood. What happens when somebody, if you cut yourself or something, your instant reaction is to put your head on the wound to stop the bleeding. I would say that is the natural reaction. But when it comes to crisis actors, they never touch the blood because it's makeup. They do not want to mess it up. And here we are, these people, they're just walking around with all this blood running, or it's not even running, it's stationary. It doesn't change either. It's the same amount of blood all the time. There's one woman, her whole face covered in blood. Then there's another one with a big, wooden rod sticking out of her head, like 25 centimeter thing sticking right out of her head. She's working in the government building. Now, when all of this happened, here comes a long series of unfortunately, the fire brigade, who's right next door to where this thing all happened, all the carports were blocked by glass. They could not open a single one, so they couldn't get out with their wagons, the fire brigade wagons. So that was blocked. Then there were some ambulances that managed to get out, and a whole long line actually of ambulances that arrived finally, but they were directed to a different street, so they were parked in a whole long line instead of going straight into the area where they were needed. People on site that were in leader positions for the rescue team, they stopped a massive big normal bus. Instead of using the ambulances, they stop a bus, they get the passengers to get out, and then they put these victims, I would say the crisis actors, in the bus, and then the bus takes off to the nearest hospital, escorted by an ambulance. I would suggest this is a very convenient way of getting all the extras in the same vehicle, get them out without being observed of anyone, nobody can interfere and so on. Also, while this whole thing happened, the police alarm system, their PCs with their alarm system was connected, were turned off, unfortunately. Also, the internet in many of these police stations went dead, unfortunately. Unfortunately, they were using a new type of system that not all of these stations and the fire stations and ambulances were using a new digital system, so they couldn't correspond with each other, unfortunately. So a lot of the communication between the different units had to be done by fax or mobile. Then, unfortunately, the police, right when this happened, there were only 4 or 5 people at the central police station in Oslo. Everybody else was giving extra holiday and so on, unfortunately. 2 of them were stationed at the US and Israeli embassies. I think that is quite interesting. So we're looking at a police station in the center of all of this with absolutely no staff whatsoever. Unfortunately, also, when many of the police came in, when they heard about this, you said, please, they volunteered, they came into the station and said, I'm here, let me do, let me help. Unfortunately, their equipment, they had been asked to give in their equipment a few weeks before this whole thing happened, so that all the vests, all the weapons, all whatever equipment were locked in. And unfortunately, the new rules that 2 officers had to be there on site to open the lockers. Okay, so the police helicopter team, unfortunately, were given 4 more weeks of extra holiday this summer to save money. Okay, they say that they needed to save money, even though the year before they had $22.7 million in saved funds that was unused. Even though this was the case, they needed to save money, so they gave them time. Unfortunately, the helicopters had been repainted. So to get them off ground, they needed to assemble all of the antennas and all of these things. That took a long time. Unfortunately, there was also, once the shooting started on the island, there was a whole team of sharpshooters ready to take off in one of the helicopters to go out to the island and take the guy out. They could have done that within 5 minutes, Unfortunately, they were given a stand down order. A stand down order. Who gave that order? Okay, so unfortunately, I think I've said that word before. Unfortunately, a specially trained commander, a anti-terror unit, was not told about that this happened. Okay, so that is a major problem. Unfortunately, it took 77 minutes for the national alert to take place. We're talking about a small country. Oslo is not, Norway is not a big country. The borders to Sweden, not far away. Shut it off, I would say. If there's a terror attack on the country, why not shut the borders? 77 minutes. In these very odd events, very often the numbers of things keeps recurring, and 77 is one of them. The 7/7 bombings, the 9/11, 7/7, 6/66, these keeps repeating, and you will see also the number of victims is 77, even though it changes several times. Okay.
Yeah, they like multiples of 11. They love it.
They do indeed. They do indeed. Anyway, so maybe we should move on to the island. I've shown that quite a few things did not work the way it should. I'm just scratching on the surface. I tell you, I could be here for like 6 hours, keep telling you about things that did not work.
So, Ole, before we go to the island, though, let me just make sure, for the audience's sake, that we get the kind of a consolidated or summarized picture of what happened in Oslo. So, he shows up he has his truck. The truck explodes. Supposed to have all this fertilizer in it. It mirrors. It's very similar to McVeigh in the Oklahoma City bombing. Bomb goes off, but the damage far exceeds anything that a truck full of fertilizer would cause. In other words, like you said, damage to buildings that were very distant from the truck suffered severe damage, and the glass was, as you had mentioned, sucked out of the buildings.
Yep.
So this would imply that some other type of explosive or some kind of, like you mentioned, advanced technology, some type of device, who knows what it is, was involved in these explosions.
When you look at 9/11, I'm not an expert of what was used, but I would say that the 2 towers, not Building 7, the 2 towers were dustified. They turned into dust. Okay, so without being a conspiracy theorist, I would put a major question mark to how is that possible? Where did the steel and the concrete and the bodies and all the furniture, where did it go? There's something here used that we have not seen before. Here, once again, there are similar, but a mini version, I would say, was used. I don't know for sure, but there is a big harp unit in northern Norway called Utoya Tromsø that could have been used to target this area. And that could also have been, heard theories about the cable that these soldiers were pulling out just minutes after this whole thing happened, that could have encircled the whole area to create an electric field where this whole thing could be. I do not know. I'm just saying. Also, I would like to just point out that there was a drill the night before. There were people in black uniforms in the area, unidentified black uniforms. People do not know who they were, just doing things there. And there was a drill, an anti-terror drill, that ended 22 minutes before the actual thing happened. 22 minutes in this exact same area and so on.
Yeah. 22 is another multiple of 11.
Coincidence. Also, when the fire brigade arrives, even though it's right next door, there are no fire wagons coming there. There are no vehicles coming in. You just see like a few fire soldiers that comes there, and most of the photos taken are taken from behind and with the faces blurred. So many of these events, when they take place, just because people are using a uniform does not make it true that they are actually who they appear to be. These could very well be, special ops, but in fire brigade uniforms, making it look, giving you an appearance of that they're actually doing something to stop it when they were actually part of creating it. When you see the first photos, like I said, so few photos of this, very, very few. And the whole thing is blown out. I would say thousands of people would have been the normal reaction. Here, only a handful. And what do? There's one building where the oil and energy department was, where there's a fire. That's the only place where there is a fire. And when you look at these black ops, often they have put explosives in an office or somewhere where they want to destroy evidence, or maybe where something was controlled from or whatever, so that they make sure that this is blown up, burned out, whatever. So I would very much, in my further studies of this case, look into what was up in that corner office where the fire was.
Yeah.
Because there's absolutely no fire anywhere else. So the fire brigade, of course, they came there, and the first thing they did was to turn out the fire. Absolutely not. What they did, there were two vehicles in the street, and the one vehicle was up on one pavement, and what the fire soldiers did was pull that one off one pavement, pulled it across the street to the other pavement. Why? It looked very efficient. It looked like they were doing stuff. They were doing absolute zero. And the only vehicle they have is like a very odd vehicle. It's a foam machine. It looks like a little tank on wheels, but or a tank with like a jet engine on it. And it's a so-called foam machine that is rolling around, pulling the car, as far as I can see. That's the only thing it does. Very odd. Very odd.
Now, Ole, are these buildings off limits? I mean, can somebody go investigate these, or are they fenced off and, no trespassing? You can't come near these buildings.
No, you can go. I was there. We walked the whole area, and it's open. They even opened like a new museum there, and it's a very open space. And on the short ends of this, it's the old wall that has been broken down, but it's in pyramid shapes, triangular shapes, the upper part. So when you look at it, you have this whole pyramid thing above the whole thing. I would say maybe coincidence. I did not see it like that.
Yeah.
No, we walked around the whole area, and also where the soldiers. Do you remember the soldiers I said with the blue glove?
Yeah.
Military police. They were there in at least two white vans, and one of them parked illegally right in front of the High Court of Norway. What does that tell you? I also want to point out that many times these things are carried out on a Friday afternoon. The reason, in my humble opinion, is that When these things happened Friday afternoon, they shut the stock market because of respect out of the families of the victims. They shut the stock market. But what happens is that during the weekend they have plenty of time to do all of this insider trading that has been building up to this thing, to cover their tracks, to lock down currencies, to make absolute billions over the weekend. And then Monday morning opens up and everything, nobody noticed what happened. This is what you see that there's so many of these that is carried out on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
And like, for instance, the assassination of the Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme, Friday evening, and it was almost the all-time high on the Swedish stock market. I mean, people that knows about these things are making a killing. Okay, so let's move to the island. On the island, the man gets across, and suddenly he just very calmly pulls out a rifle and a gun. He says he's there to check the security of the island due to what happened in Oslo and so on. And the two first people he shoots, he's talking with them, and then suddenly just pulls out a gun and kills them, is the step brother of the Norwegian princess. He was there as a security guard. I don't know if this has any relevance at all, but it was the woman that had been in charge of the island for many years, and then the stepbrother of the Norwegian princess that was killed there right there and then. Then he continues and just starts shooting people right, left, and center. Everyone on the island, young kids, have their own mobiles, so they start calling. They're freaking out. I mean, they've seen people getting murdered around them, so they're running and trying to hide, and they try to call the police, of course. Unfortunately, in Norway, it's 112 instead of 911, and they say that due to so many people calling at the same time, the whole thing just went dead. They could not use, or the lines were just engaged, so they couldn't get through. When they finally got through, some of them, the police said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're focused on what happened in Oslo. Please deal with that yourself." Or other people were told, with no emotion, "We don't believe you. Get your parents, call your parents and get them to call us so that we know for sure." Okay. So once the police took off to get there, unfortunately, a long series of things happened that just delayed everything. And please keep in mind, while I talk about all these things, every single minute somebody innocent is being murdered. Okay? Now, the local police had a special vehicle for these type of terror things and so on, a very special vehicle. Unfortunately, the battery was dead this day, so that they had to find jumper cables and a battery to get it going and so on. I told you the helicopter team, they right away when this happened, they said, we're here, please use us." They were told to stand down. Same with the helicopters with the snipers, stand down. So no helicopters arrived at all while the shooting was going on, and it was going on for more than an hour. It's unreal. Instead, 2 black helicopters, unidentified, were being filmed circling the area.
Wow.
They had been seen days before this whole thing happened as well. Then the first police units that came did not try to go across towards the island. Instead, they went to a camping site a bit north of where this whole thing, because as soon as the shooting started, the chairman of the Labour Party, the youth group of the Labour Party, his name was Eskil Pedersen. He and some friends escaped. They ran for their lives. They say jumped on this ferry, and instead of going straight across the ferry to where the mainland is, and at the same time trying to save some of the people trying to swim in the water, escaping, they just took off in a totally different direction and went about some 3-4 miles north, where they rammed this ferry up on shore so that it couldn't be used. Then They were transported, and they say they hitchhiked up to a town called Hörnefors, where they were sitting for hours and hours, not doing anything. I'm going to come back to this Eskil Pedersen because he's key person in this whole thing when it comes to stopping it from helping or to work the whole, what do you call it, rescue operation. Anyway, when the children were calling, they were calling to the police. They were promised by the police that the police, the ambulances, everybody's coming to you by vehicle, by car, by boat, and by helicopter. It said no one came. No one came. Okay, so when the police arrived to this camping site, did they try and get hold of a boat so that they could go across? We're talking about it will take like a minute with a good speed boat to get across. They did not. And unfortunately, the police in the cities Asker and Bærum, they had patrols that were available, but they were not asked to join, even though they offered to come in. And then when the police patrol from another city called Drammen came to the island, they were just ordered past the island and go to the next major island. That major island is also where some helicopters came and landed instead of going to the small island where it was needed, you know. And then, unfortunately, the special ops came, you know, but they had problems with their communication system because they'd started using a digital network called Tetra, but the local police was using the old analog system, so they could not communicate with each other. And because of that, it just was delayed about an hour or so. So this Delta team, there are 5 Delta teams. These are special ops, specially trained for all of these things. When they were called in, of course, they went straight to the island. They jumped in their special vessels with all the special equipment. They went to the island and took out the bad guy right away. Absolutely not. They were told, first they passed the ferry where the ferry is supposed to be, because they didn't see it. They were driving too fast, they say. They went to the camping a bit north of this, which is about maybe a kilometer north of that. They went down on the camping where there were several boats, several privately owned boats that they could have jumped in and used. Instead, they turned around and continued 8.6 kilometers further north. That is like 5 miles.
5 miles.
North.
Yeah.
And there they found a rubber boat that they say the fire brigade supplied them with. Okay, so what happened was they jumped in this rubber boat. There were 10 of them, and they had all this heavy armor and equipment and weapons and all of that. So they're standing up in this small little rubber boat. And when they leave the shore and they go unfortunately towards the wrong island. Even though you can hear the shooting going on, they go in the wrong direction. Then when they finally find out, oh my God, we're going in the wrong direction, when they turn around, because there's so many in the rubber boat, it starts taking in water, and then the water kills the engine. So they're floating around. Please keep in mind, people are being massacred every single minute. So this special ops Delta team is floating around, drifting for the wind. When a privately owned boat comes out and says, what's up? Can we help you? Yeah. So they swap boats with this guy. So the SWAT team is finally on its way and arrives to the island. Do they go full speed ahead? No, they go towards the island. So, like I said, the police helicopters were told to stand down. There was one police sniper that had the guy, the shooter, he had him right in the crosshair, and he had an earpiece as well. He was in contact with the police central station. He was told to stand down. Who gave these orders?
Who did give those orders, Ole? Do we know? Do we have a suspicion?
I do not know. I do not know.
Okay.
I do not know. Also, my God, when I think about all of these families, all of these victims, the tragedies, every single one, the daughter, the brother, the sister that was murdered, that people that will never recover, families that are broken because of things like this, Okay, in total, There were 11 helicopters involved in this operation. But they were landed on the main island north of the small one. Anyway,
So there were 11
sorry,
helicopters?
11 helicopters.
Yeah, we have 11, we have 22, we have 7. Very interesting.
While this guy was walking around shooting, there were witnesses talking about everything from 1 to 5 different people in police uniforms killing people. There was the daughter of a high up police chief. She called her dad and said, "There are 5 people in police uniforms, killing us here. They've hung explosives in the trees. Please come and help us." It's in a book called "When Terror Hit Norway." It's there referred to. That's the only time she's given interviews, as far as I know, or that this thing has occurred. But people on the mainland could hear that shots were being fired in different positions on the island. Okay, and there were some of the teenagers that escaped from the island that said there was up to 3 different shooters, but the official story only one. There was one press helicopter that arrived and were filming the island while this whole thing was going on, filming when normal people were trying with their small boats to rescue teenagers in the water and so on. And by chance, they managed to film the police that is walking around shooting as well. Now, the guy that is filmed is a southpaw. He's a left-handed shooter. And the uniform that he has on has totally different reflexes than the uniform that is put forward as evidence in the court case and so on. Also, the guy that once arrested, there was a photo taken of him, and he had like a wetsuit on, a bluish type of wetsuit with a police emblem on his left shoulder. You compare his face to the facial structure of Anders Behring Breivik, I would very much say they look similar, not the same person. The other guy is much more muscular. And also on the chest of Breivik, of the guy who's now sentenced for the whole thing, there's a big emblem, a printed emblem, but the guy arrested did not have that. Also, once the helicopters landed on the island, it is said that it picked up one sharpshooter and left the island to look for the whole thing. I would say maybe it transported out some of these shooters away from the island. But here is something absolutely mind-blowing. While Anders Behring Breivik was walking around killing people, he called the police twice on his mobile saying, "Good day," or "Hello, my name is Commander Anders Behring Breivik in the Norwegian anti-communist resistance movement. I'm at Utoya at this point, and I would like to surrender. I would like to surrender to the Delta team." So the police says, "Okay, what number do you call from?" Not any surprise, like, what are you talking about? They just say, "Okay, what number are you calling from?" And he answers, "I'm calling from a mobile." And the police says, "You're calling from your mobile?" And he says, "Well, it's not really my mobile." And then it's cut, cell phone. Then they say that unfortunately they didn't write this down because they didn't see the importance of it, and it was only later that this came forward. But they could not call the number back, because apparently some people say that there was no SIM card in the cell phone, or that it was probably locked, whatever that means. Does that not mean that you can call back to it? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Also, it is said that when he was arrested, the time when he was arrested, the shooting kept on for some 5 to 7 minutes afterwards.
Ole, as you're explaining this, I'm wondering to myself, was he even there, or was he simply a patsy or a dupe that they inserted into the storyline afterwards?
It's a very good question, Mike. It's a very good question. I do not know,
Yeah.
And they say that he posted a manifest on Facebook, like a massive, it's like 1,516 pages long, talking about this whole thing. But that was updated after he was arrested on Facebook, go figure. And also that is a cut and paste copy of the Unabomber, more or less to the exact wording. There's some words, but it's the Unabomber. And if you looked into that case, there's a lot of big question marks around that one as well.
Yep.
Then you have like when the ambulances arrived to the crossing where the ferry could cross, they were standing there, please let us help them. And the police kept them away. They kept them away from these youngsters that were dying. There was especially one girl that died. There was a Delta member standing there not knowing what to do, and she died. I think she was there for 45 minutes without being looked after. It is awful. It is awful.
It's very disconcerting, Ole. First of all, what's really troubling is the fact that how well coordinated these things are between the police, the investigators, the media, and so on. I mean, it's very, very troubling.
The thing I would suggest that what we're looking at is not a Norwegian operation. I would suggest CIA, Mossad together for several different reasons. Some of them I'm aware of, some of them I'm sure I have no idea about. One of the things is that at this point in time, Norway was trying to get out of the bombings in Libya and Afghanistan. People were reacting against it. And had Norway pulled out from these NATO operations, the risk would be that Denmark would have done the same. And who knows what would have happened to NATO then.
Right.
I think just like Obama says, from time to time, we need to twist the arms of nations. I think this is such a twist to scare people back in the line. And after this, Norway was named honorary member of NATO. But you have also, there's some very weird Freemasonry links to these things as well. So some of the key people around this whole thing are very high up Freemasons. One of them, the Grand Master, his name is Ivar Skar. He's also the leader of the Norwegian Freemasonry nation or order. He was in Oslo when it happened, when the bomb blew, and then he drove more or less parallel with Anders Breivik and arrived at the same time when the shooting started, where he had his holiday home overlooking the island, and so he could sit there on his veranda, see people getting shot and so on. Anders Breivik's dad is also a high up Freemason, very high up, and there's very, very odd things around that family, the whole setup and so on. So I went to the island. Please keep in mind that the Delta team, in my opinion, did not do a very good job. Feels very much like they were part of slowing the whole thing down. Either that or the whole bunch should have been fired, without pay for the rest of their lives to mess up like this. This is not what happened. So the day after I gave my speech in Oslo, I went to the island together with this journalist Hans Gaarder and two of my new Norwegian friends, a man and a woman. We went because I wanted to get across to the island to get my own view of the island and see what happened and so on, and also to pay respect for the victims of this awful atrocity and so on. And so we met up with the journalist Hans at this camping where so much went wrong. And I met up with my friend at the camping, and he's a real laid-back guy. Cap, unshaved, glasses, very cool. And he was sitting. He hadn't eaten before, so he was sitting eating out of a pasta bowl that he had brought. A big bowl, plastic, all of that was still there, just shoveling away when we met up. And so we said hello and so on. We went into there's a little like a tourist office at the camping, and we went in there to ask if we could, if they knew about the ferry, the timetable, or if we could rent a boat or a canoe to go to the island. And the woman in the cafeteria, a very young woman, she reacted a little bit odd, I thought, because a bit defensive. So when we asked, she avoided answering about the ferry, or she said, I don't know, I don't think it's working, being in use today. It was the day before the anniversary, the very day before the anniversary. So I said, okay, in that case, can we rent a boat? And she said, no, because the man who's got the license is not here, whatever that means. Okay, so I said, but then can we rent a canoe? Because the canoes were right outside the door. And she said, oh, okay. When? I said, now would be a good time. And she said, oh, okay. So I started filling out a paper. I filled in my name and all of these things. And while I was doing that, my friend was using the bathroom. And when he came back, I heard he was starting talking with another girl who was working in the doing the washing up or whatever. I don't know, in the kitchen. And she said, no, the ferry is working like usual and so on. And she was talking about the memorial ceremony the day after and so on. So I said to the girl, please, we go. If the ferry's not there, we'll just come back and we rent the canoes and go. Fine. So we left, and I had the pasta bowl in my lap while he was driving. We went back to this place. This is way out in the countryside, small roads, and where the ferry crossing is, very small little parking, maybe for maximum 30 cars, something like that. And we went down there. We were all alone. It was only us there. And the island is just, you can see it very clearly. It's not only like 600 meters across. So we parked, and that infamous little ferry was there, but with a wire across, so you could see it wasn't in use. And next to it, there was a brown, like a wooden boat. It looked like one of these tourist boats, that goes through Paris or Amsterdam or I think in the Norwegian fjords as well. That was there. And there were some people inside, and I saw that. And the other one, only other people there was two people from the Red Cross that were sitting on like a mini party tent. It looked like one of these white plastic tents. And there was an identical one on the island. On the parking, though, I noticed that there were quite a few officially looking vehicles, like police, ambulance, some other ones. So I just discreetly took photos of them, because just in case, you never know. And also, so we went up to these two people from the Red Cross and said, "Excuse me, do you know when the ferry is leaving for the island?" And they answered oddly as well. They said, "The last one is coming back from the island at 6:15." And I'm like, I'm here on the mainland. I would like to go to the island. When is it leaving? And they say, well, it comes and goes all the time. And I wasn't really sure what boat they were talking about, because the only one that I knew about was the ferry that was right there in front of us. So a little odd, the conversation was a little odd. Anyway, so we decided, let's just wait here, and whatever boat comes, we'll take it across to the island. And my friend was still eating the pasta. And then suddenly, after like 15 minutes or something like that, three young people came running out of this wooden boat across the where you put the boats, ran across that and jumped into like a small little rubber boat, a very fast one, I think with one or two engines. One of these you stand up and, Baywatch, that type of things. And it just speeded off towards the island. And I thought, excellent. So I started filming it so that I could time the exact time it would have taken from the mainland to the island if somebody really wanted to make a difference, It took more or less exactly 1 minute for it to get across. 1 minute. That is 160 seconds. Okay. Anyway, so we thought maybe somebody had a heart attack out on the island, because it was an emergency. You could see these three people had like wetsuits on with headsets. So the people that jumped in the boat, very professional looking, jumping in there and took off big time. Then about 30 seconds later, the boat came speeding back. I mean, full speed back, coming towards the mainland. So when it arrived, two police officers jumped out of it and started running towards us. And so I turned to our friends and said, "We're getting visitors here." They didn't understand what I was saying, because they thought they were just going to run and grab the police car and take off, because maybe somebody had robbed a bank or something. But here, suddenly, boom, these police officers were standing right in front of us. One male, one female. The male one, early 30s, very well built. You get the military type, the way they stand, the balance, the whole thing, that type of police officer. And armed as well, which is new in Norway. So they said, "Hello, what are you doing here?" And very polite, at the same time very strict, And they say, "Please identify yourselves." These things I do not like. When people, this is the first sign of a police state when you look through history. When the police is allowed to demand you to identify yourself, that's the first sign you really need to watch out for. So Anyway, my friend with the pasta bowl, he was still eating, and he said, "But why do we need to show our ID? We're here in a public space. We're just waiting for a ferry." Guy said, "Listen, I'm not up for games. Just identify yourself." And then my friend continued while eating, saying, "But why are we suspected of anything? You know, do you think we're terrorists or what?" So he just grabbed him, no, not physically, but just he said, "You and I over there." So he walked off with my friend, still eating away with his famous pasta bowl, uh, and told his partner, "You check out these three ones." So while they were standing over there, the woman asked us for ID, and my two friends that had nothing to do with it, they showed their IDs. I mean, the woman, she's quite young. She was shaking afterwards for maybe an hour afterwards because it was so intimidating. They showed their ID. I had my passport in my pocket. I just felt I'm not going to show it to you. At the same time, I didn't want to mess it up for them because they had nothing to do with it. So I brought out a Spanish insurance card with my name on it. I said I was not prepared, to have to show passport in Norway, of all places. I'm a Danish citizen, but this is it's not like it's a state secret. I mean, I was there giving a speech, So
Yeah.
anyway, so I gave my name and so on. The other officer came back, checked out the info, went on the radio. Then less than a minute later, he came out, stood right in front of me, and said, "Ole Dammegård, there's a decision taken. You are not welcome here today or tomorrow at the anniversary. We know that you gave a speech in Oslo, that you have theories about some murders being connected and so on. Everybody is entitled to an opinion, but it's not welcome here. No Norwegian or Danish police has nothing on you, but uh, you are now told to leave this area. If you do not leave on your own, you will be arrested."
Arrested for what?
And
For having an opinion?
sometimes I get scared. This time I did not,
It's
for not
unbelievable, Ole.
leaving.
I know. I'm just saying.
No,
It's
for
just
not yeah, you go figure. I totally agree.
wow.
And the thing was, what got to me was, like, here I was out in the countryside in Norway, and he was talking about Danish police as well. It's like, where the hell did that come from?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I said, okay. I looked in his eyes. I mean, he looked like somebody doing his duty. He was totally in it. You know. So, but I said, okay. At the same time, I would like to ask you, since you are the one protecting what I believe to be a very, very ugly incident in history, protecting it from people like myself, I would please ask you to maybe inform yourself about what it is you're protecting.
Mm.
So, but that was like speaking to a wall. I saw there was absolutely no response whatsoever. So anyway, so my friend still eating the pasta, he said, "But so what is your name?" He said to the officer, and the officer, he said, "I'm not giving that to you." So, and then he said, "But do you mind if I take a photo of the two of us together?" And he almost went to take like a selfie of him, and the police officer, he backed off and like, absolutely not, like that. What I can give you is my service number. He said Delta 031, which was like, whoa, since there are 5 Delta teams involved in this operation. How many Delta units are there in a small country like that, like Norway? And for sure, I know Delta 04 and Delta 05 were part of this whole thing. So what are the chances of Delta 03 also involved, since there were 5 different Delta teams working that day? So suddenly I was standing, maybe looking into the eyes of one of the people that were in that SWAT team, in that boat, being part of the whole operation, and now part of covering the whole thing up, or protecting the official version. So very, very odd experience, to say the least. Anyway, so he said, leave or you will be arrested. So we left, but we didn't leave. We went to the camping instead, because this is the whole thing. Just because people have a uniform and a pistol or something like that, they're so used to you to just bend down, bend over and said, yes, of course, you're the mighty, heighty one, whatever. Not in my world. Just because you have a uniform, fine, doesn't really make you right. Anyway, so instead of leaving, we went to the camping, because I wanted to sit there for a while, looking at this beautiful island. It was exactly 4 years after. It was the exact same day and time of day when all of this happened, and the weather was almost identical. So it was like the island was right over there, and it was almost like I could hear the screaming, the shooting, all of this, the tragedies, and I was feeling the water, the temperature. I just felt, I felt my heart was breaking, for all these normal people that are totally just victims in this big games where the
Right.
more dead people, the better for them.
Yeah, they look at
Awful.
them as just pawns in the game. It's
Collateral damage is
collateral
what
damage.
it's that's what
Exactly.
it's called. But I want to continue around that whole thing because the ammo that was being used in the autopsy protocol, there's no caliber or anything anywhere. It's just said this victim shot by rifle or pistol, rifle, pistol, or rifle and pistol. Nothing about what caliber, what any. And the ammo that was found by some researchers was from a company called Silvertip that makes very special ammo that totally explodes inside the body, so that you don't have one bullet. It's just thousands of pieces inside of you. And you cannot buy that as a private person. The military is not allowed to use them. It's only for CIA and Mossad special ops, as far as I've been able to find out.
Hmm.
Also, the number of deaths, like, unfortunately, they managed to miscalculate the number of dead people on the island to 86. The number that was 86 for like 2 days afterwards until it went down to 69. I mean,
Okay.
how can you do that? How can you count 86 bodies when there's only 69? And then two of the victims' families received the bodies of their children, and the official story was that they drowned, but when they opened the casket, their children had bullet holes in them. And then the medical autopsy people, they say, "Oh, sorry, we didn't notice." I mean, come on, for the love of God, what is going on? And then, so it was changed down to 69, and then with the 8 so-called dead in Oslo, it comes to 77. So the official number is 77.
Oli, other than you and maybe a couple of other people, who is anybody looking at this? This is just so unbelievable.
I think I'm one of a handful. I've been after I went live with this I was threatened, indirectly threatened, a subtle death threat the other day. Very nice. To shut down, to shut up, and not name people out of the Delta unit. There was a subtle little email saying that special kill teams that work in the dark and the light. I wouldn't name the people in Delta Force if I didn't know for sure. These, very nice. Otherwise than that, I've received emails from people in Norway and around Norway saying, "Thank God, finally somebody who's doing it, looking into this thing," because I think we're looking into a massive, massive operation. Has nothing to. Norway is the place it happened, but we're talking something on a global scale.
Yeah.
I I want to point out some very odd things as well,
Hmm.
because surrounding these awful atrocities are many times Freemasons and Bilderbergers, people from the Bilderberg group. Uh, the Bilderberg group, for the listeners who might not know about this, please Google them. It's a group that has been around since '54, and they are like handpicked key people in all Western countries. And now it's going more and more east as well, with the idea that the people behind this group that are part of the so-called New World Order, their idea is that if you can control a handful of people in every single country, but in the exact key positions in society, you can control that country more or less from behind the scenes, pulling the strings, pushing it in a direction that no one will notice, especially if several different countries are going in the same directions, and you will not see that the leaders and the people in key positions in these different countries are all connected to the same group. We're talking a part of the world shadow government, the Bilderberg group. Anyway, so when it comes to these things, I always look for Bilderbergers around them, or if they're anywhere nearby, and so many times they're right before, right after, and also the ones that unite the nation in the sorrow, in the tragedy. We will stand up against terror. We will not let us defeat. We will stand up for free speech, and all of that we want to hear, and all the candles and all the flowers. These are the people that were behind it, part of it. So in this crime, were there any Bilderbergers? For one thing, there was a drill that way before this whole thing happened, an anti-terror drill on the island. Also, this island, according to my Norwegian journalist friend, is infamous of having been used for mind control experiments to get the new generations for the Labour Party in line and corrected. Not sure, but I think since mind control is very interesting in this case, when you look at how the assassin was arrested, I didn't get to that. When the Delta team finally arrived, they called out his name. He called twice and said he wanted to surrender to the Delta team. When they finally arrived, they called out his name. He put it down his gun, and that was it. They just took him with no shooting, no nothing. I would say that could be the sign of mind control as well. So
Yeah.
just boom, turn off, turn on.
Yep.
So there is a woman, she's called the land mother of Norway. Her name is Gro Harlem Brundtland. She was the Prime Minister of Norway for many years. And she's also the architect and the author, together with Morris Strong, of Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is like the manual for the New World Order, how they want to turn this beautiful world into an absolute state of terror. I mean, the future this book talks about is horrendous for the rest of us. Please look into Agenda 21. You will think that it's written by a total maniac, but it's something that has been approved of by so many countries you cannot even imagine. So, anyway, Gro Harlem Brundtland. She was many times over the years on this island because she was a social democrat, together with a young man called Jens Stoltenberg, who is a Bilderberger, and whose father, Thorvald Stoltenberg, is a Bilderberger since many, many years back, very central in the Bosnian War and these things. But Gro Harlem Brundtland came to the island this very morning before the shooting started, okay? She was on the island speaking to the youngsters there, and then about an hour before the shooting started, she left the island with that little ferry, okay? Then Jens Stoltenberg, who was the prime minister when this happened, he was the one that united the nation after this whole tragedy happened. He's very central in the whole thing as well afterwards, and he was later made the head of NATO, which is a Bilderberg appointment, Jens Stoltenberg. His idea with NATO is to dismantle it. When you look at the New World Order agenda, the whole idea is to create a world army, not to protect us, to control us.
Right.
And so they need to get rid of NATO and the United Nations and the UN troops and join them into one world army. That's the whole idea. Now, the guy that jumped on the ferry and took off and got the ferry stranded on shore so that it couldn't be used, and then took off and disappeared for some hours, was later transported around in an armored vehicle. At the memorial, the Prime Minister said, "Your Majesties, Eskil, and the rest of you." Also he was hugging him, he was kissing him. And we're talking about the Prime Minister and then the leader of the Youth Party that so cowardly left the island that today he's being tried, or he's been accused as being a traitor. I mean, as a crime, because in Norway, as a fishing nation or a navy nation, you're not allowed to let someone to not rescue somebody who is drowning or something. You need, according to Norwegian law, to try and save him. And these people just took off, left them to die. Anyway, Eskil Pedersen, as far as I've been able to find out, is the illegitimate son of Jens Stoltenberg. So here we are looking at Gro Harlem Brundtland, Bilderberger, Jens Stoltenberg, Prime Minister Bilderberger, the one that took off and totally sabotaged the ferry, his illegitimate son, I would say a future Bilderberger. And also there's plenty of photos of Eskil Pedersen together with Thorvald Stoltenberg, who in that case would be his granddad. And so on. So around this whole thing, Bilderbergers. Coincidence or not? Then there's a major question mark. Where was the Prime Minister Jens Stoltenberg when the bomb blew up? Officially, he was in Oslo. Officially, he was at home, where at the Prime Minister residence. And when this whole thing happened, he went down in the basement and was leading the whole thing from there. But I think I found a smoking gun, or through my friend Hans Gårder. After the bomb blew up, way before the shooting started at the island, the TV2 on the Norwegian television called out the Prime Minister to get a comment regarding the bomb explosion. And I used to make music for TV4 in Sweden, so I've been in the graphic department many times, so I've seen how it works. And this is the way it works. If there's some kind of emergency or something like that, the reporter calls that person by phone to get a comment. Then he talks to the graphic department at the same time. He says, listen, I want some live images in the background. I want a still photo of the person I interview. And then I'll let you know where he is. And then you just write live from Las Vegas or live from wherever it is. Okay. That is the way it normally works. So here, the Norwegian Prime Minister is being interviewed right after the explosion. You got the live images, smoke and dead bodies, people running around. And then you got a still image of the Prime Minister. You got him on the phone and he says, we still don't know what happened. We're not sure if it's a terror attack. We have no idea. But our hearts go out, reaches out for the families of the victims and so on. And while he's talking, up in left corner says, live from Utoya, direct from Utoya. What does that tell you? I would say he was on the island just before it happened. He was on the island. Gro Harlem Brundtland was on the island. He was on the island. His son was on the island. The Delta team, or the shooters were on the island, however many there were. The whole operation team was on the island. And then with circling helicopters around while it was all taking place and so on. Because also when you look at, there was like 68 people officially killed on the island.
Yeah.
But none of them were killed in the main building. All of them were scattered around, hiding behind rocks, but none of them in the main building. They were hiding everywhere they could. Why did no one try to hide in the main building? There are no shooting. There are no bullet holes in that building. There's none. I would say sometimes you attack yourself to get empathy also, and then you go free. Because there were several children of people in key positions in this whole so-called rescue operations that could not be criticized because they had their children on the island as well, defending themselves. But how can you accuse a thing like that? My daughter was there, for God's sake, I would say, would it be possible that they were hiding in the main building when this whole thing was carried out and then let out afterwards? And why, for the Mother of God, why are no parents standing out screaming, shouting, what happened to my child?
That's my question, Ole. As you're discussing and telling this story, I'm thinking to myself, where is the outrage? Where are the parents? It's just, I don't know, it's surreal.
Where are all the people that was fired because they were so, but according to the protocol, like when you hear comments from the police chief and so on, they said everything went as operation was supposed to go. Did they invest? Did they spend loads of money repairing these systems? I have not seen anything of it. It went the way it was supposed to go.
Yeah.
If so, then we're looking at an operation that is on a scale that is just incredible to coordinate all of these shutdown systems and so on. How to do it? It's not. I mean, with my knowledge, I would be able to plan a thing like this and think of what needed. They have handbooks for these type of things, but it seems to me like this operation just had it all. They used everything they had.
Well, that's what I said before, that the conspiracy is so well coordinated that it's mind blowing.
Yep. What can I say? I'm just referring
Yeah.
to what happened. I'm just like, and I tell you, I think I've only scratched on the surface. I'm really going to dig into this one because
This is where a lot of people fall out, though, Ole, right? Because they just cannot get their heads wrapped around the fact that these types of events can be this orchestrated, this engineered, this controlled.
but then I ask you, what are the chances for all of these things to go wrong at the exact same time?
Oh, I hear
What
you.
are the chances? I would very much like to see that in statistics. We are talking, I mean, 1 in a trillion, that's not even close to. And like I said, I haven't given all pointed out all the things that went wrong. This everything went down, everything went wrong, and also I'll give you a final one, and then we'll call it a day. When I was there, I had this amazing synchronicity. I went there to Norway to say goodbye to some friends who, absolute incredible friend, Ingunn Sigurdsdottir, who he and her husband have they have freed themselves from Norway. They've given up their passports, their bank accounts, everything, and instead they created what was called Niceland. Their plot and their villa they claimed as international free territory. Anyway, so they managed to do that. They became a symbol in Norway. There's so many people nowadays that are doing similar things, liberating themselves in symbolic way of showing how to get out of the grip of these forces. So anyway, I went to see them first of all when I came to Norway, and when we arrived there, they had like a goodbye party, and one of the people at that party was an elder gentleman. He's about 84 and so on. And in the evening, my friend Ingun said, "Please, I hope you don't mind sharing a bedroom with one of the other guests." And I said, "Fine, not a problem at all." Turned out that we shared the same bed. And in the morning when I woke up, it turned out that it was this 84-year-old gentleman. His name is Per Aslak Entresvåg. Difficult name to pronounce. But anyway, he turned out to be the only one in Norway, as far as I know, that has written books about the Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Committee of 300, the Skull and Bones, and all the connections into the Norwegian government and so on. Unbelievable. So we had like a pillow talk 6 o'clock in the morning. Didn't even know this man existed, and here I am sharing bed with him. It was incredible experience. I was just listening there for an hour or so. Anyway, I'm just showing this synchronicity that happened these days. So a few hours later, I said to my friend Ingun, "Please, can we just go to Iceland to your house and see it? Because it's so symbolic." Yeah. She said, "Yeah, fine." So we drove there, took some photos. I was very happy to be there with them. And then on the way back, her husband says to me, "Well, by the way, do you know that Anders Behring Breivik is in prison right over that hill, on the other side of that hill?" This is like an hour and a half from Oslo to way out. I had no idea he was there at all. So I said, "Yeah, please." So we went because it turned out that Mick, his name is Mick, he has his office just like 300-400 meters from the jail, from the prison. So I said, "Yes, please take me there." And he said, "Yeah, because I also want to show you something there." So we drove up there. It's in Skien, in the outskirts of an industrial area is where the prison is. So since this is the number one prisoner in Oslo, I was expecting like high protection, high tech cameras, barbed wire, all of these things. Absolutely not. It's a very small prison. The wall is not very high. a few cameras, nothing like that, nothing else. And right away, it's sort of like, whoa, I felt it was a bit strange. But since you know, I'm a friend of Chip Tatum, a CIA whistleblower. He was a black op assassin. He was involved in many false flag operations and also flying people in and out to prisons for mind control experiments and programming and so on. And he was also George Bush Sr.'s, the commander of his private team of assassins called Pegasus, who carried out at least 17 assassinations and so on. Not a beginner, not an amateur. Anyway, Chip has mentioned when he's been talking about these flights with people in and out, that the things that he's mentioned are like army bases, Navy bases, and prisons where they fly these people in and out so that they can do whatever they want. Like he said, the famous doctors, whoever they were, could do whatever they want, and then they picked them up and they were used to whatever operation they were supposed to be used in. So when I saw this prison, it fitted in to what he was talking about, small prison, secluded area, and so on. And one of the things that Chip mentioned was that you need an airstrip quite close by, where hopefully without a flight tower, so that you can come in, land during, and take off in the middle of the night without nobody noticing and so on. Then you take them in by helicopter or vans and so on. So I asked Mick when I saw the prison, I said, "Is by any chance is there an airstrip nearby?" And he said, "Yeah, so right over there. It's like less than a mile." Okay, so I said, "Please, can you take some photos of me in front of the prison and so on? Maybe I can use it for some. I'm going to send it to you." And yeah, and then Mick said, "But while we're here, I want to show you something." So we walked around the corner, and there was this discrete building. It looks like a company building, and in front of it there's a small little office building where it just says auto import and a phone number. And according to what I've learned about other types of mind control and these type of areas where they do these experiments, is that often they're surrounded by like front companies that are like CAA fronts or whatever, you know, and these can often look like car imports or furniture import, but very often they're connected to maybe body armor, some kind of military thing, or internet security, these type of things. And these buildings are then surrounding the area where this takes place, so that they have like that they keep normal people away from that. So when we went around the corner, right away I saw this building, and I thought it looked very odd because it's a building with 6 or 7 carports, no windows. And by the side there were a big container, and behind the building there was a big container. The container by the short side of the house was painted the same color, so of course it belonged to that one. And then Mick said, "Please, but come, I want to show you something," because he and his wife, they took walks through the forest quite often in that area. And that little track made them come out right between the wall of the prison and this company. It's only like 30 meters, which is 100 feet, something like that. So on the short end of the building, there was this big container, and like a cargo container. And it was on the end of it, it was where they hadn't repainted it, but so you couldn't see it from the street level, was still a very green color, even though it was quite old. And there was a serial number and a logo on it. And then we went on the back of the building, where you cannot see at all from the street, where there's this massive big container, green, and it says Evergreen on the whole thing. Now, Evergreen, as far as I know, is one of the major front companies for the CIA that are used in so many different things, and where a lot of chemtrail, the different types of planes are developed. And I mean, it's just massive, this thing. And here I am standing like less than 100 feet from the prison walls to where this high security prisoner, Anders Behring Breivik, is located. I mean, there's so few buildings on the inside. I think maybe he's one of 10 prisoners in there or something like that. Very few. And you got this Evergreen container right on the outside with an airstrip nearby. And also surrounding this whole wall were like 10 meters of brown grass. And we're talking Norway, it rains all the time, the grass is green in the summer. Here the grass was dead around it. And I said, but it's so odd with the grass, because and they suggest maybe they've sprayed it and so that you can't hide in it. But the type of grass was not thick, and if it's green or if it's yellow or if it's brown, you can't hide in it anyway. So, but it was dead,
Yeah.
And while we were there near the wall, I felt very uncomfortable. I felt almost sick, And in the end, I said, please, can we leave this area? I felt very, very strange around my neck and my shoulders. And when we drove off, I asked them to stop the car twice. I needed to get out, get some fresh air. And I felt very, very odd for almost an hour afterwards.
Did you think it was
I am
electromagnetic?
not somebody who normally can feel like I was just going to say I'm not a person who can feel, healing and these type of things. People say, "Can you feel the energy?" Absolutely not. I'm sorry. Can you feel that? Absolutely not. I'm sorry. But this one, it was like a physical, some kind of like I feel that the grass was dead because of this energy field. Some kind of you mentioned electromagnetic. It was like something surrounding this thing was just boom,
Yeah,
like this, that type of energy.
that was my thought. Yeah.
How would that work, Mike?
Well, electromagnetic frequencies only will interfere with you biologically. It will affect your DNA. I mean, at least this is my understanding of it, and this is why things like Wi-Fi and cell phones, even the high-powered electrical lines that you see many times here in the United States, they will tell you do not buy a home near these high-tension wires because the electromagnetic frequencies that are emanated from these towers could cause somebody to feel very uncomfortable, to feel out of sorts, to have anxiousness, those types of things. And by the way, EMF or these frequencies are used in mind control today. This reminds me of an interview I did with Harold Kautzvella several months ago. And Harold was retelling a story where he was traveling on a road, I believe it was Germany, and he passed a car that was oddly parked on the side of the road. And as Harold passed that car, he felt this very strange sensation come over him. And what had happened was he had blacked out for a very short period of time. And then he came out of it, and he almost lost control of the car. So he believes that he was targeted by an electromagnetic type of device. And so, I mean, this stuff, it's out there and it exists. I know it sounds like science fiction and it sounds wild and weird, but, anybody who's been near EMF types of devices, as an example, if you sit in your room all day and you've got your router connected, after a while, many people start to feel very uncomfortable. They start to feel very much out of sorts. So when you mentioned that you had that sensation, I don't know, that's the first thing that came to my mind.
Yeah, my feeling was that they put a lid on that place, so who's ever there is like a zombie inside,
Yeah.
some kind. That was the feeling I got because, oh my God, to be in that all the time, awful, absolutely awful.
Yeah. Yep.
So, Mike,
So, Ole, that is unbelievable.
I told you I had quite a story for you. It's like the more I look into this, it's just unreal. And the thing that gets to me is why are people in Norway not standing up, screaming? Why are nobody looking into this? I mean, you don't have to be a genius to see that something very odd happened here.
Yeah.
But there's zero, absolute zero.
Well, it's like that all over the place. I mean, we have things here happen in the United States, all over the world, and, people just don't seem to get up and make any noise about it. But I am going to say this. You need to be very careful, my friend. You need to be really careful.
And at the same time, not. It's full speed ahead
Yeah.
because I want to get these things out. Because if something happens to me, then it just confirms what I've been saying all along.
Yeah.
And it will also point straight at the same forces that are behind this. Should anything happen to me or anyone I love or anyone I know or so on. So, and my health is fine, my car is checked up, everything is perfect. So, and I'm not suicidal. So the whole idea is to not be stupid, but at the same time, we really need to expose these things. And I don't see these things as a historical event that happened in the past, so why even bother looking into it? I'm saying these things are ongoing, so we need to expose them to stop future ones from happening.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know you're really smart about it, Ole, and I know you know how to hit that balance. It's just when you were telling a story about when you were waiting for the boat, and they just seem to know a whole lot about you, So, and I know you know this. You're on their radar.
Yeah, I know that, but the thing is, I'm not smart. I'm very naive many times. I'm gullible, but somebody needs to do this, and I don't know anyone else that is doing it, so I need to do it.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, if anyone would like to help me in my efforts, I'm not employed by anyone. I'm not paid by anyone. Please, this is not something I do for me. This is something I do for us. Just like other people on putting themselves on the line. As an exchange of energies, please support me financially so that I can go out, get there, be on location. I want this so much to be able to reach people. And I know when I meet them face to face, it's so much more powerful that what can happen. And also I learn so much from being out there. So I feel often like I'm like a car without petrol. I need somebody to help fill me up, and then boof, I'm off. So on my website, lightonconspiracies.com, there are newsletters, there are books, there are donation buttons. I can only say I'm extremely grateful for any support. And also, if you don't want to support me, please look at other researchers that you respect and support them instead. Because we need to turn this around. The people behind the New World Order, they are pushing forward big time, and their agenda, they want this to go down in a very black hole very soon. So all of you who maybe think it's better to hold on to your money, if their plan works out the way they want it, this money will be useless within a very, very short future. So why not use it for the better of all of us? Invest in the ones that really are out there trying everything we can to make a difference. And let's have a party on the other side once we transform this whole thing. This whole year, 2015, is the year it's going to change for the better if we can manage to do this, to keep the ball rolling.
Yeah, we need to come together and work together and collaborate, and we will. We will turn the ship around.
We're already doing it.
Well, Ole, you never
Yeah.
disappoint. You always have amazing information. But I think this one takes the cake. This was riveting. That's why I didn't say much during the 2 hours. I was just listening. It's just amazing stuff.
What can I say? If I made it up myself, it would be one thing, but I'm just stating facts of what has been found out.
Yeah.
Well, I got more for you in the future as well if you're in for it. So anytime you want, just let me know.
I told you every show, you have an open invitation to come back anytime. Anytime, my friend.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Anything else, Ole?
Can I finish with a prayer?
Absolutely.
It goes like this. May the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light. May everyone, and especially the ones who hurt us, be filled with peace and joy, love and light. Victory to that light.
And that concludes our interview with Ole Dammegård, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. Ole's work is completely self-funded, so if you could take a moment and visit his website, lightonconspiracies.com, and consider donating or sponsoring his work, it would be greatly appreciated. You can also purchase Ole's books at his website, including the highly acclaimed Coup d'etat in Slow Motion. And as always, I'd like to thank everyone for listening and visiting the blog. You can get to the blog by typing in sageofquayradio.blogspot.com or simply head over to our hub website at sageofquay.com. Also, if you get a moment, please visit laboroflovemusic.com to listen to my album, Leaving Dystopia. And remember, live in truth and always serve creation. It's really that simple. And to sign off, here's Ole's song, From Prison to Paradise. See everyone next week. Be safe, enjoy, and God bless.
It's our future.
Once upon a time, in a place not far from here, there was so much loneliness, despair, and oh so much fear. Darkness ruled all over the land, there was lightning in the sky, causing wars and separation, with no one knowing why. These evil times raised leaders, disguised as kind and true, hiding the true and misty fogs only very few people knew. Controlled by an elite few, manipulating you and me, closing out the light of power that will make us all be free. Wake up.